What would you say if I'm gonna tell you that the Mercedes C300 is somewhat better than the BMW 3 Series, or much better? This is somewhat nice looking car despite the age and the badge. Obviously what you would expect to see from Mercedes, or not. Because this car will be next in line for the review. And I'm planning to do the entire restoration process on this car, which is getting the car as close to the original state as possible. And then we'll decide on what to do with the car next. And before you start typing those ugly comments how shitty Mercedes is and how great and cool BMW are, which I agree with, we'll talk about that in the conclusion. But in this review, I wanted to tell you and explain you why you at least still wanted to consider the Mercedes, or especially the C-Class and the E-Class. Today we have a 2010 Mercedes C300 that we're going to be checking the interior, exterior, engine, and eventually we're going to test drive it. Also, we're going to do something sketchy. Ooh. I owned this car for about 2 years. And I never thought I would stick for so long with a car that not a BMW. And I am BMW fan, a huge BMW fan. As you've seen earlier, I have another one lined up for you. I decided to purchase a Mercedes and see it for myself. Why people arguing a lot in terms of whether the BMW or Mercedes, which is two sides and they both sort of right. Mercedes is hustle-free, always goes the way you kind of plan on. There are a few problems with the car, or I wouldn't necessarily say the problems. There are a few things that can go wrong, but nothing major. Whereas BMW, that major is so-called maintenance that people still calling it maintenance. It is correct, but this maintenance costs insane amount of money. Whereas this car, for me, it was like real pleasure in terms of waking up in the morning, starting the car, driving to work. That's it. That's all what I've been doing for 2 years, changing the oil, some other stuff we'll talk about in a second. As for the BMW, every single morning I was, yes, to BMW gods, and I was hoping that when I press the start button. Anyway, good morning. This is a third generation of Mercedes, so-called third generation, and it's been manufactured from 2007 till 2014. 2011 till 2014, we had the LCI, sort of LCI, or the restyling. And specifically, I want to mention that you wanted to buy a 2010 and newer cars, whereas after 2009 and up, we have fewer problems with this car, as specifically the electrical problems. So let's start briefly with the exterior, and then we'll continue, because there are a few quirks and features and downsides apparently that you probably wanted to know about. First of all, the body itself, the Mercedes did offer this car in sport and luxury. Those are technically the same but different. Particularly for the sport model, we have a different bumpers, a little bit less chrome, and a little bit stiffer suspension, and car also sits a bit lower to the ground, which is approximately 0.6 inches. Overall, more aggressive look for the sport model, better handling, and I would say generally better performance. Mercedes did offer this car with the all-wheel drive system, their 4MATIC system, and rear-wheel drive. This one is rear-wheel drive, and there was a variation in terms of manual and automatic transmission as well. So those are the things that you can find on the market. Obviously, this car isn't new and used. You cannot buy it new. So, I mean, that's great that you cannot buy it new, because it's a bit outdated. So first, from downside, it's the headlights. Lights aren't that great on those cars, and for some reason BMW have much better HID lights or even halogen lights. They always tend to have a better visibility than the Mercedes. I had the GL 450 and the C300, and like they poorly lightening the road, which is obviously not great. Overall, the front bumper and the look of the car is pretty good. It's not as aggressive as BMW for sure, but we have quite a few body lines that really appealing looking, and I do like the design of this car, especially if we're talking about the sport model. The back of the car is a bit different story. I actually really like a bit sharper and kind of not rounded design, but basically the tail lights is giving away a lot in terms of how old this car is. This is one of the points that I'm not quite liking it, but I really don't care as long as the car is drivable. On the other hand, the dual exhaust in this car look pretty good, and it also sounds aggressive, kind of aggressive. You can't really hear it from the car, but the outside, this car still do a little bit of popping. I also have a little stick, which is I seen in Car Wow, and they usually stick something into the hole and see how deep it can go. I would say it's quite deep. Dang, it cannot even fit in the frame. That's a long ass hole. One thing I forgot to mention, that this car had a 3 variation, which is C300, C350 and C63 AMG with biggest displacement and biggest engine, which is 6.2 with the 450 horsepower. Speaking of the power and the engine, this is V6 3.0, delivered 228 horsepower and 221 pound-feet of torque. The similar engine with the bigger displacement was installed on the C350, which had 268 horsepower and also was connected with the same 7-speed automatic transmission. This car, by the way, was available with manual as well, so sometimes you gonna be able to find a manual transmission in those cars, although they're pretty rare, and usually they've been sold in Europe, and some people did ship them here, but apparently, like I said, they're quite rare. Although I would say if you put here a V8, there's not going to be place to work in those cars, and especially if they're older, and if you wanted to do or capable of doing some DIY, I highly recommend you to go with either C300 or C350. Both of those engines are amazing, they are great, and they're really reliable. Speaking of reliability, those engines have no oil leaks whatsoever. This is yes, I know your BMW fans will start like, hey, get underneath the car, you'll see everything. It's like drizzles of oil everywhere. It's a German car, it's supposed to have oil leaks. Volkswagen, Audi, BMW, Porsche. It doesn't have any oil stains or basically oversprayed of some kind of debris on the engine. It's extremely clean, which is my huge point in terms of those cars. They are insanely good in terms of the engine, and those engines are really healthy in terms of not having or not overproducing the horsepowers, and basically being only or having only 228 horsepower. Yes, it's a little lame, but apparently this is what is great about those cars, although the gas mileage isn't that great for the size of the engine and horsepower that is produced. In any case, it's 18 to 25, speaking of that. But you can fill it up, this car, with E85 flex fuel, which is roughly $3 on the market instead of premium, right? That's a plus. On the other hand, this car still have some issues or problems with certain, or I would say not major things, as for example the drive pulleys and the belts. They start squeaking or they start getting wobbly. This is a normal thing. Every 100,000 or 80,000 miles you would want to install the kit. Same with the oil, spark plugs and filters. Few sensors here and there. Another one, it's a steering lock, which is really annoying problem with those cars. In particular, this is one of the biggest problems and one of the most expensive one. That's what left from after 2009, the problem with electrics or electronics, and one of the modules will basically lock your steering column, and you wouldn't be able to do anything except going to the dealer or getting a dealer type tool like an OBD scanner. You know what really important? That this car does not consume oil. By that, I'm saying that every 1,000 miles, you don't need to fill up your engine with oil, with half a quarter or quarter, however you do a BMW owners. I am personally BMW owner, so. In any case, let's move to the interior. As for interior, it's kind of good, but it's not great. For some cars, you can say it's aging well. For example, like BMW, the 3 Series specifically, they have more modern design and they doesn't have those numeric buttons in any case. It's like this entire piece right here is like completely outrageous, and something what hiding behind the screen is even more outrageous because it's quite useless. Can't say much. It's like, what are we in the era of first iPhone with the joystick that doesn't do shit? The gauge cluster, I actually don't mind it. I pretty liking it, especially with the backlit, the white LED light shining from the back. It has the same or similar problem with peeling buttons that they miss in the paint, specifically to the one that you touch in most often, the steering wheel, AC, control panel. All of those buttons are missing the paint. Overall, I really have a mixed opinion in terms of the design and how everything came out. I really don't like the shape of this steering wheel. I'm not a big fan of that entire dashboard, which is rounded and more calm vibe, I would say. Basically, this car doesn't telling you like step it on this gas and make me, I mean, that's not a bad sound, but it still doesn't tell you much in terms of going fast in this car, which is not necessarily true, because it can go fast and is pretty confident driving on higher rated speeds, but overall you just enjoying it driving this car as just daily commuting. The back seats also have decent amount of space. We have good amount of storage. We have a decent sized glove box. We have a elbow rest. Speaking of the elbow rest, I love Mercedes for what they're doing, because you can actually rest your elbow on the elbow rest in the central console, whereas in BMW you cannot do that, for a simple reason that I don't know why. BMW, tell me why you didn't want it to do something like that simple. So one particular problem with those cars, specifically for the interior, like beside the paint on the buttons, you will lose it sometimes. If you're not gonna use it, you're still gonna lose it. If you use it, you're gonna lose it even faster. Another one is the seats. Those seats are known as is like 90% times to have a seat rip. A lot of times when you looking to buy this car, just make sure to go in around and see the picture of the seats right away before you even go to look on the car, because it's quite outrageous to have the rip on the middle of the seat, that's what it happens, and that's what really common. I also have the video on how to replace the cushioning, and cushion for those cars around $100 to $200 on Amazon, but like I said, this is something that you gotta watch out for. So there are only 4 points that talk about this car: suspension, or general drivability, which is the suspension and the steering, then the comfort, transmission, and insulation. Let's start from the last one, which is pretty good. Generally, you can't really hear much from outside or exterior sound. You cannot hear the exhaust sound when it's even more on a more aggressive side. And it generally pretty good. It's definitely much better than the Honda or Toyota. Like let's compare the same generation, the Accord or Camry or Solara. It's double, might be even triple in terms of how quiet it is inside of the car. The next one is suspension. That's one of the kind of weaknesses in this car, which is, don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but it has few downsides in terms of, specifically in terms of the front suspension. This car have a sport suspension with quite good handling, and the car can withstand and hold edge really well. But some of the components are actually going down relatively fast, or around 100,000 miles. You definitely wanted to consider to replacing like lower and upper control arms, as well as link stabilizers. Those are components that they usually last, like, in best possible way, it's like 100,000 miles. Better if you will replace them sooner, cause Mercedes known for, or it's just really common situation where you have your brake rotors, especially the front one, start wearing unevenly, and when you press the brakes, car will start shaking. In any case, that's the only stuff for this car, and generally, if you will be replacing any of the suspension components, better if you go with something like OEM or OE quality, just kind of a good, relatively good products. Probably want to spend around $600 for the suspension components plus the work. Otherwise, suspension is actually handling quite great. I wanted to say excellent, but let's keep the excellent for BMW, because BMW known for great handling and really good suspension work. As for the seats, they are pretty good. They're not great, but those seats are just perfectly fine for a short commute, basically up to 1 hour. Anything that past this point is like, it depends probably on a person and how they used to drive. The next one is transmission, which is not bad, again, because it's reliable. I never heard any of the problems with those transmissions, and it's 7-speed. It's pretty much got everything except the speed of shifting the gears. Unfortunately, and the downside, I think, that this transmission was installed on C300, C350, and they're known for being really slow. So sometimes it takes from 1 to 2 seconds to just change the gear, because car cannot figure out, like, what are you trying to do. If you're trying to pass somebody, you slam the gas, car downshift once, it takes some time, and then it downshifts another gear, and that takes even more time. So your windows is already closed for that maneuver, like fast maneuver. Although it still have manual adjustments, so you can manually downshift the gears, which is much faster in that regard. But the transmission isn't that well built in terms of aggressive driving. There's also a comfort and a sport button, and if we'll press the sport button, in any case, this car overall appeal doesn't seem like you want to be spending a lot of time with smashing that acceleration panel. Combining with the engine power, which is 220 or 230 horsepower, not that much, but it's more than enough for this car to be a really good commuter. On downside, the gas mileage from the reset is 22.4 for past 18,000, 19,000 miles. So I definitely can say that it's not fuel efficient, but like I said, you can use a flex fuel or E85 octane, which is the same flex fuel. So this is kind of upside, because the flex fuel is roughly $3 per gallon, whereas premium is $4 or 4 plus. In conclusion, this car not bad at all, because of some of the downsides are more regular one that you will encounter with most of the cars there are on the market. Yes, the labor for those cars are higher, and apparently the prices for the parts is a bit higher, but in comparison to the BMW, it isn't bad. As well as a lot of common problems, they does not exist here. There are a few that really known for being a problem, like steering column lock, which is you either, like I said, need to go to the dealer, or you need to have a special tool that can fix that issue. Or there are crankshaft position sensors, speed sensors sometimes going out. As for the engine, I drove this car for 20,000 miles without resetting the tachometer, and I own it for 2 years. And as I mentioned, there was not a single time that I had to, or I wasn't able to drive the car because of some of the issues. One in particular is the suspension. That's the most money and the time that I spent on. Same with the squeaky belt. Overall, this car does not have the same appeal as the BMW. Interior definitely pretty lame, but it's stylish to the point that you're not disgusted by any of it, except the pill and paint on the buttons and the buttons from the phone, and this guy, which is, I don't know, like, how did I end up having something like that, which is kind of outrageous, where you can see a lot of cars of the same generation with really nice screens, and this one in particular is something from 2000s era. And for short commuting, this car is perfect. It has all the needs that you want. It does have that aux that you can buy the Bluetooth dongle and have your phone connected. That's what I usually had here. It has really good visibility as of from every side of the car. It's nice. It does have the sunroof. It has premium material. Doesn't have any noise whatsoever. This car have 145,000 miles, and it holding up really well. It just have everything that it needs to get you from point A to point B, which is pretty much every other car have, but on pair of the same year and the price. I don't think you'll be able to find something better than this that can offer you the same reliability, comfort, drivability, and performance ratio, let's say, to what are you paying and what are you getting. Another one is make sure to do the PPI, which is a crucial, and I'm highly suggesting you to do so. If you cannot afford it, you probably shouldn't buy this car. Go for something less expensive, less kind of flashier, visible, and like something Toyota or Honda from 2000, 2001 or whatever. It just, don't buy this car if you don't do the PPI. Otherwise, you can, if you have a friend who know what they do in the cars, make sure to bring him with you. Make sure to check it out, the messages on the car, as well as just have a physical list of problems that this car presumably could have. With that being said, I hope you guys liked the video, and if so, make sure to put the thumbs up button there, subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment below. I'll see you in the next one.